Fear never goes away. That's number one. Everybody needs to understand that. That fear is never going to go away. I don't care if you're Warren Buffett or Bill Gates. I guarantee you those guys still have negative self-talk that goes on in their heads. But the difference is they face it and they move past it.
Are you confident? Do you have consistency? How much conviction do you have? I'm Daniel Gomez, the Confidence Architect, a business strategist, keynote speaker, executive coach, and best-selling author. On the Daniel Gomez Inspire Show, we will help you unlock confidence to create consistency and develop conviction. Together, we will discover the key that unlocks your confidence. Welcome back to another episode of the Daniel Gomez Inspire Show. I'm excited for this guest because we kind of have the same blood. For those that know me, man, I'm a car dog deep down inside at my core. I was in the automotive industry for 20 years, ran multi-million-dollar corporations, and it just excites me when I get a guest that's from the automotive industry and is a proven leader, ran multi-million-dollar organizations themselves. And welcome to the show, Dave Foy. How you doing, man?
Oh, doing awesome. I'm excited to be here today, Daniel.
Man, you're just a rock star on LinkedIn. You rock it. You have a huge following. You got a top podcast yourself, man. And I was able to be a guest on your show. And dude, you just got like so many wins that you're doing. You ran multi-million-dollar dealerships and organizations. And dude, I know who you are. I'm bragging on you already, right? But woo, man, I'm excited for this one. Let me tell you, when my wife told me the other day, and then it was funny. She asked me a question. And then not only that, one of the main, there's a big company called the Wash Tub here in San Antonio. And the VP called me. He goes, "Hey, Daniel, you ever think about getting back in the car business?" I said, "No." I said, training in there is good enough once a week or once a month. I get my fix, but I'm good. But man, I tell you what, it still runs in my blood, right? So let the world of the Daniel Gomez Inspire Show know who you are, Dave Foy, if you don't mind, brother.
Yeah, that's a big lead in to follow, man. Appreciate that. Yeah, so I started in the auto industry back in 1987 as a technician. I went through a program that Ford still has called Asset, where I was trained to be a technician and came out with all my Ford certifications and associate's degree in automotive technology. After a little over 4 years of doing that, I realized that I was not a very good technician. And so you need to know your strengths and weaknesses in life. So I moved on from that and took a service advisor job. And that's where I found my stride. Dealing with the people every day, helping people, consulting with what their cars needed. I spent the next 10 years or so as a service advisor. I won a bunch of awards from Ford. And then I moved on to, I got an opportunity to be a service manager. So I started progressing myself up through the ranks from there to the point where I was a fixed ops director for multi-point stores. And now have kind of gone back a little bit of my roots, and I'm a service director at a Ford store after many years of being out of Ford. So there's a 30-plus year career in 45 seconds for you.
Man, but above that, dude, you're doing it, though. Think about this. You're being bashful because I know this guy, right? I follow him on LinkedIn and I admire him, and we collaborate a lot together. And he has a mastermind. He has a podcast. So he's a business owner too. And that's what I love about you, because I think you're stepping out of your comfort zone, and you started this podcast, and you're one of the top very successful podcasts in fixed ops. And it's just amazing, man. So I want you to shine, brother. Don't be bashful on the Daniel Gomez. We bring the boom here, baby.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I am definitely an introvert at heart, that's for sure. And if you had asked my wife 5 years ago if I'd be hosting a mastermind every week and doing webinars and have my own podcast, she would have told you that you were crazy. And yet here I am on other podcasts and with my own podcast, which was top 200 as of last week. I'm pretty proud of that. And I appreciate you getting everybody acquainted a little bit with that. Definitely something I'm proud of, but it's shining the spotlight on myself that's not my forte. I'm here to help others, you know?
Well, you know what? I want to go back to the opening statement that you said. You said something pretty interesting that caught my attention. You said you found out really quickly what my strengths and what my weaknesses are. And being a mechanic wasn't one of your strengths. Why do you think it's so hard for people to figure out that if you're not good at something, like, step away from it? And I say that because I meet so many entrepreneurs, so many business owners that really they're not good at something in their business, but they insist and persist on continuing to do it. And that's why their businesses are struggling. Talk to us about that.
Yeah. So I would attribute that to two words: comfort and fear. It's easy to be comfortable and sometimes it's the devil, type of thing, where you can be in something that maybe it isn't your passion, you're not that great at, but it's providing a living for your family. And what's your alternative? You're gonna go and learn something totally new. And the other side of that is fear, which is you're afraid. If I leave this that I already know how to do, what am I going to do? How am I going to make that work? How am I going to learn something new? And I'll tell you, Daniel, for me at the time, I was still pretty young when I was leaving being a technician, going to a service advisor. I think I was all of 22 years old, something like that. And no fear at 22 of anything, right? And I was, yeah. And look, I was a young dad. I had my son the day after my 19th birthday. So I had a wife and a son that I had to take care of. So it wasn't like I was 22 without a care in the world. I was 22 with a wife, a son, and I had just bought a house. So I had responsibilities, but I also knew that I wasn't very good at working on cars, but I was really good with relating to people. And that was my reason for making that shift, was so that I could expand that more. But now I'll also tell you that I told you, I stayed as a service advisor for 10 plus years. I got into a comfort level there too, where I had some opportunities to go and be a manager. And my inner self-talk was like, what do you know about being a manager? You're a technician and then you're an advisor. You don't know how to manage. You don't know how to read a financial statement. You don't know how to do that other stuff. And I let that keep me down for a long time. So but believe me, when I say comfort and fear, I've experienced both of those and let myself be victimized by both of those.
Well, you know what? Let's address each one of these. I like the way we're flowing with this conversation. So let's talk about fear, first of all. Yeah. I think fear is something that at some point in our lives, we're all going to find fear in front of us. I know I did when I left the automotive world, when my wife was diagnosed with breast cancer. It's like, hey, she's depressed. I didn't have a choice, right? Because, you and I both know in the automotive industry, you're working 10, 12 hours a day, and it's either work or home, family. And I chose my family. I chose my wife, resigned, and the rest is history. And I think for me, it's just like, I was all in. I burned those ships. I burned the automotive industry. And what I mean by I burned it, I was like, I didn't want to go back, because I knew that to become the man that I am today, I had to really focus on my wife, had to focus on God, first of all, and change myself, because I had become somebody that I didn't like. How did Dave Foy address and attack the fear that you had in front of you? And walk us through this, because I really feel that right now, especially the way the year's been, that too many of us, we've been consuming this negative news, and even though they know they shouldn't watch it, they still watch it. Talk to that person right now, Dave, on how you overcame the fear, and you're still overcoming it, but you're winning, right? You're winning as you're doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. The fear never goes away. That's number one. Everybody needs to understand that. That fear is never going to go away. I don't care if you're Warren Buffett or Bill Gates. I guarantee you those guys still have negative self-talk that goes on in their heads. But the difference is they face it and they move past it. That's the big thing that people need to do, is you can acknowledge the negative self-talk, because it's not going to go away. It's been bred into us in millions of years of evolution, and it is there to try and keep you safe. But we're not running from saber-toothed tigers anymore, right? It's a different world out there right now. So you need to acknowledge that fear, and then you just need to understand why you have that fear, and understand whether it is an actual fear, or is it something that you're inflating in your head and making it much worse than it is. What is the worst case scenario if you face that fear and you go do something? Now, I'm not advocating that you say, you know what, you're right, and I don't like my job, so I'm quitting today. That's not what I'm advocating. But face the fear, and if you want to move out from your job, start doing something. Do something every single day to help you move in the direction that you want to go, to that vision that you can see. Just every day, do a little something to get yourself there.
Yeah. And I love that. Right. So what Dave is saying is this, write this down, act in spite of fear. You need to act on your dreams, on your vision, in spite of the fear, because the fear is never going to go away. You need to act in spite of that. And this is the part of my show where I tell my audience, it's time to get your pen and papers out. It's time to put that magical pen to paper, because when you write it down, it registers more likely to your subconscious mind. And write it down like you're going to teach it, because you're going to it's going to help reframe your thinking. And so take some notes, because Dave's going to drop some just wisdom here today with us. And thank you, Dave, once again for being on our show. And act in spite of fear. That's what Dave's saying. So Dave, let me ask you this. Tell us a time, because I love to put stories in the podcast, because people can relate to stories. Tell us a time or a story when you were scared and you still did it and then you won, right? Tell us a time of that in yourself.
Yeah. So I'll give you two stories. One is when I was scared and I didn't act. And two will be when I was scared and I did. So a few years ago, I couldn't even tell you how many, probably 10 years ago, I was a manager at a store, service manager at a store. My director, the person directly above me, was leaving to go to a different dealer group. They offered me his job. So it's a step up in position for me.
And
at the same time, and pay, and a demo, and some gas. It had a lot of perks. And in my head, I said, and not even just in my head, I said to my wife at the time, I'm like, I don't know how to do his job. So I'm going to take the job, and in 3 months, they're going to get rid of me because I didn't know how to do the job. Instead of thinking, okay, I got 3 months to really learn this stuff. And so they offered me some more money, some extra perks, and I kept saying no. And what I had on the other side of that fear was this person that was moving on at the new dealer group was also saying, hey, you can come and be my manager at this store. So I had that safety net there. And that's what I ended up doing. So I didn't act in spite of the fear. I let the fear overcome me, and I didn't take that job, which I look back now and it would have been an amazing opportunity. But I moved over to this other dealer group. I was a service manager there for 3+ years or so. And then I had another opportunity, which was 12 minutes from my house. I was driving an hour and 20 each way to get to this other store. 12 minutes from my house to be a service director, to do the job that I had that opportunity to do a few years ago, and I turned it down. And this time I said, no, I'm taking this job, and I'm going to make this job mine. And it was at a store that was in trouble. This wasn't a walk in the park job. I was taking over a store that needed to be fixed. And Daniel, I walked in there and that place transformed me. And I didn't let the fear overcome me. I took that job, and we took that store from last in CSI. So for your listeners, CSI are those surveys that you get sent after you have your car fixed. This store was last for 3+ years in the region. Dead last in the region for 3+ years. They had never even moved out of the last tick, up one, for 3+ years. And in 11 months, we were the number one store in that region.
Boom, baby. Congratulations, man. Look at that. You would have never had that win if you wouldn't have acted, right? Mm-hmm. You would have never had that win. So let me ask you this. What was the difference between the first opportunity that you passed us by, that you let pass by, and then the second one? Because I think so many of us, even right now in this season that we're in, there's opportunity all around us. I hear people talk about the negative, and they talk about what's wrong, and because they focus on what's wrong, they miss the opportunities that are right.
Right.
So talk to us about that.
Yeah. So here is what it was. While I was at that other store, I had a couple of team leaders the technicians were in teams, and I had a couple of team leaders that wanted more. They didn't want to just be a technician for the rest of their life. The team system was something we instituted when we got there. So number one, we had to pick the team leaders. I had to train those team leaders. And then those couple of team leaders were saying, hey, do you think I could ever be a service advisor? And I'm like, absolutely. I'll train you to be a service advisor. One of them moved up to service advisor. And then shortly after I left, became the manager of that store. And I got a call from him about 2.5 months ago to tell me that he just got hired as a director of a store. So he has now reached the same level that I'm at from somebody who was a technician when I started working with him, and moved himself up the ladder. And from some of the training that I helped him with. And he called me to say, hey, I really want to thank you. You got me reading the right books. You showed me the right stuff, blah, blah, blah. It made a big difference in my life. Having those guys there that wanted me to train them got my mind to look and say, you have more to offer than to just stay here. You need to get in a position where you can impact more people.
I love that, right? So you said something that caught my attention. So I really want to pick your brain here. You said that you gave them books, you gave them stuff, right? You trained them. Mm-hmm. Right now, many people are stuck at a level of thinking, and they're stuck there. They don't grow from that point. They don't want to grow from that point, or they're so unhappy that they just tolerate it. What did Dave Foy do to really elevate his thinking? Because your thoughts changed, right? It wasn't just that, because regardless, your instinctive behaviors were there. So walk us through that process. Give us 2 or 3 takeaways that you did to really start transforming your thinking that helped you to say, you know what, I can do this. I can make this happen. Talk to us about that, please, Dave.
Yeah. So I will tell you that the first book that I always have somebody read is a very simple, Who Moved My Cheese? And it's simply to get your mind around the fact that you constantly need to be moving. You constantly need to be assessing your situation and not afraid to move on. And for anybody who has not read that book, I am not a big reader. I love audiobooks. That is probably the one book in the world that I have read probably 50 times. And you can apply it to any situation in your life. I don't care what you're going through. You can read Who Moved My Cheese and make it relate to what you're going through and find a way to have it help you. That was the first thing. Was I had him read that, and he came back and we started having conversations around that. And you're right. It was absolutely a mind shift thing, because I wasn't teaching him financial stuff. I wasn't teaching him things like that. It was all people skills. And I'm going to say leadership skills, but leadership is really not a skill, right? It's not just like love is not a skill. Leadership is not a skill. It's something that you can develop and something that you can bring to people and bring to a team, and something that you can certainly get better at. But I don't look at leadership as a skill. It's a skill set that you can have. And that was the stuff that we worked on. We worked on the softer skills, if you will. And that's something that's kind of, for being in the automotive industry, that's not like, that foo-foo stuff. They don't like that foo-foo stuff, man. Show me some numbers, show me some stuff like that. But, don't talk to me about my mindset. So what makes Dave read Who Moved My Cheese 50 times? I've read the book. I love the book. I've read it twice, not 50, but what is it that you take away from that book that keeps you just really going back to it? Because I think there's a lot of wisdom in that book. Yeah. So the biggest thing that I take away every single time I read it is that you always need to be assessing where you are, even if you are satisfied with where you are right now. That is where that comfort level kicks in. And that is where comfort takes over your life. And then from comfort becomes fear. You don't want to move. And that's my biggest takeaway every single time. Obviously, there are a lot of other lessons in that book, but that's the big one, is that you always need to be assessing that situation. You always need to be sniffing the cheese, right? Yeah, because I think so many times we get used to what is normal, right? And we get the word that comes to mind right now is commonality. Commonality destroys our dreams. Commonality keeps us below average. Because we always, as human beings, we gravitate to what's common. And I love in the book, right? Because you have the 2 little mouses, and it's a good book. I love it myself. And the guy goes, dude, like, who moved my cheese? It's like, well, go find your cheese. It's like, well, where? It's like, well, dude, it's not over there. Go find it somewhere else. But so many times I've seen that just in business, that what worked for one season, it doesn't work in another season, because life is a series of seasons. Business is a series of seasons. Yeah. And I think you can attest to that just running multi-million-dollar organizations. That we ran this promotion last year. It worked. What happened? Our revenue went up 100,000. Mm-hmm. It's not working. But sometimes in our own stubbornness and that commonality, we want to have the cheese there where we have it all the time, and it doesn't work that way sometimes. Yeah, it's the phrase that I cannot stand, Daniel, and it's we've always done it that way. right?
Oh, take out the knife. Take out the knife.
I know it. And yet it's so, I'm sure it's common in other industries too, but in the automotive industry, I always think of it this way. So whenever somebody tells me that, it's usually when I'm in a new store. Why do you do it that way? And they're like, well, that's the way we've always done it. Okay, so
you're hurting me. Stop saying that.
So Joe comes in the morning and punches Daniel in the face. Daniel says, oh, good morning, Joe. And then they go about their day. Anybody that says, why does Joe hit Daniel in the face? And they're going to go, oh, that's what they've always done. So that makes it okay. And that's the best way to start our day is by Joe punching Daniel in the face just because they've always done it that way. It just doesn't make sense. If you can't put a real why to something, then what is the point of continuing that behavior? And that's what the sniffing of the cheese becomes, right? It's just, that's the way it always was. That's the room they went to. That's where they found their cheese. They hung their sneakers up, blah, blah, blah. You've always got to be on the lookout. And if 2020 didn't teach this to people, then I'm not sure those people can be taught, because 2020 in the automotive industry, there were a few different fields. There were those who said, oh, this'll pass, and tried to continue on the same path. There were those that said, all right, we'll just hunker down and we'll get through it. And then there were those that said, okay, this is what we have now. Let's make this work.
It's amazing you say that, because even within automotive groups, I went to go visit some here, I think right when, I would say March, April, around May. And within the same group, two different GMs, two different totally. One got the cheese moved, the other one went looking for it, one didn't. Same owner group. And one of them was flourishing, one of them wasn't. And it's because of the general manager, right? And then just yesterday, I got a call. Hey, Daniel, we want you to do a training for our general managers because we've had a record-breaking year for our automotive industry in our group. I was like, what? Yeah, but that's what I love, right? They had a record-breaking year, but I want you to come in and talk to them. And the scarcity mindset, the lack mindset will say, well, why are they going to speak to them? They're already doing great. But you know what happens when you have a big year like that?
You fall down.
You get comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
You get comfortable. And then you stop doing the things that got you to where you're at because you got in that place of complacency and then you don't bounce back. So I want to shift here a little bit because I want to talk about Dave, right? Because right now, you've done some amazing things. And right now, we got a lot of people that are stuck. And they're stuck worse than what they realize, right? They're probably a week away maybe from being homeless, or a week away from just going crazy because their kids are still at home. But I want you to talk to that person right now, Dave, and tell them, because you did something that many people won't do. A, you started a mastermind. B, you started a podcast that's been very successful. Talk to that person right now that is in that place of fear, like we started talking about, and comfort, and tell them what they're missing out on when they pass through that fear, when they break away from that comfort, because you're doing it right now. And talk to that person right now, please.
Yeah. So I think one of the big things, Daniel, is that people think that they don't have a story to tell. And everybody has a story to tell. No matter how boring you think your life was, you have a story that somebody can listen to and be inspired by. And what you need to do is start telling that story. And whether that is that you start a podcast and you tell the story and find people to inspire that way, or it's just a matter of actually getting out there and talking to people, whether it's in where you work, your family, whoever it is. You need to just start talking to people about your story and about what's going on in your head. And you will be amazed at the things that open up when you open up, right? So people always talk about when a door closes, a window opens. And I heard somebody say that their mom used to tell them when a door closes, God opens 10 more windows in front of you. And that's really the way it is, right? You just need to always be opening up those windows. And you are going to find that behind one of those windows is the way. And it'll be kind of obvious when you find that way. And it may take a while. I mean, look, I'm not a young guy. I'm 51 years old, and I'm finally finding my way into what I really enjoy doing and what my actual passion is in life. And you have to keep opening those windows. Don't grow tired of opening those windows.
Wow. Boom, baby. That was a wisdom right there. Word of wisdom. Open up. You have to open up. And as you open up, you see more opportunities before you think about that. Dave, he doesn't look 51, but he's 51 years old, hitting his stride, and he's doing it. What's your excuse? You got to stop looking in the mirror and stop making excuses and look in the mirror and take Dave's words of wisdom. Open up. Let me ask you this, Dave. What makes Dave Foy distinctive? What makes him unique?
Wow, that's a good question. So I would say what makes me unique is the fact that I started from pretty much the bottom of the automotive industry. And it wasn't necessarily an industry that I was actually planning on going into. I was actually enrolled to do computer repair. And I was going to get in on, those new things called computers back in the late 80s. And my dad showed me this Ford program, and that's how I wound up in automotive. And so I started from that technician level, which you're coming into the automotive industry. I knew nothing about cars before. Literally had changed the oil in my car once when I started on this journey. And I worked my way up from there. I have worked all the positions in the dealership. And so when I walk into a store and I'm talking to a technician, I'm talking to an advisor, I'm talking to a porter, I've done the jobs that I'm asking them to do. And so I have that credibility, if you will, with the team when I come in there, because I'm not a guy who just plopped out of the sky into a management seat. I worked my way up there. And other part of that is I had some great mentors. I had 3 very strong mentors along the way. So I've worked my way up and gotten to that manager seat, but I also have the wisdom to back that up. I think, unfortunately, a lot of times in the automotive industry, the guys that get to the manager and director chairs, through no fault of their own, have not gotten the training that they need to be able to effectively lead those teams. And so I'll shorten that whole answer. I think what makes me distinctive is I had 3 great mentors that gave me the training that I needed to be an effective leader for where I am right now in my life.
So describe yourself in one word.
Wow.
I'm making you think, man.
In one word.
Yeah. Describe yourself in one word. Come on, man.
Dude, that's a tough one. Complex.
Complex. I was going to say good looking.
That's 2 words.
Yeah, good. You got me on that one. Complex, right? Complex. Man, I'll tell you what, you've been a great guest. Complex. No, I don't think you're complex, man. You're amazing, but complex. Why complex?
I'll say complex because I'm in this automotive industry where it's such a masculine industry, and yet I am much more of the foo-foo kind of guy. I like to meditate. I've got my crystals and my rocks that I wear on my arms, and behind me, my wife has all the essential oils, all that kind of stuff. I love that stuff, man. I love connecting to the universe and hearing what it has to say.
Awesome, man. So what is a quote, a scripture that Dave falls back on when he's having that day, when it's just one of those days where you want to go and run away or you just feel like giving up? What is a scripture or a quote that you fall back on, and share that with us?
Wow, another one. Man, I could have used some warning for that one. All right, so I'm going to go back to my favorite book, Who Moved My Cheese, and it's Evolve or Die.
Yeah, evolve or die.
Evolve or die, man.
Yeah.
You got to move on.
The world is always changing, right? Either we evolve or we pass away, one of the two.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So let's do this. I love your energy. I love who you are. I want you to share the last minute we have here. Look into the camera, speak into the audience, and I want you to encourage that employee, that business owner, that person that needs a word of encouragement right now. Take about a minute and just speak to them right now and light a fire under them for me, Dave, please.
Yeah, so it's 2020 as we're recording this. It has been absolutely a tough year for some, but it has also been an extraordinary year for some. And I'll include myself in, it's been both a tough year and an extraordinary year for me. I lost my dad in February, and then COVID started, and I started at a new store that needed to be built up. You can take those things as obstacles and allow them to stay in your way, or you can take those obstacles and move them around and use them as building blocks to getting to where you want to be. And there should be nothing that ever stops you from constantly moving forward, from constantly building the life that you want. And you need to start by having that vision and knowing what you want. And it's not about money. It's not about wealth and fame. It's none of those things. This is about envisioning the life that you want, the impact that you want to make in your life, and going out and achieving those things and using those obstacles as building blocks, small blocks that build big walls, big foundations to put your dreams on top of.
Amen. Love that, Dave. Thank you, man. This has been an amazing episode. Think of the wisdom Dave just shared with us. He shared how he started from the bottom of a mechanic, worked his way up, took a chance, started a podcast, has a mastermind, has a great following as an influencer on LinkedIn, and he adds value. So if you don't think you can do it, all we are is me and Dave are just ordinary people that believe in an extraordinary God, and we took action and we applied our faith. So ask yourself this question as this episode comes to an end. In what area do I need to activate and apply my faith? This has been a great show. Thank you for being with us, Dave. If you loved what you heard here on this episode of the Daniel Gomez Inspire Show, please come join our community on Facebook, Distinctive Syndicate. We welcome you. We get a lot of inspiration, a lot of just knowledge and wisdom that's shared in our group. Distinctive because you're unique, and Syndicate because we're a community that helps each other, because as you lift others up, God in the universe will lift you up. That's a wrap for this week's episode. We'll see you next week here on the Daniel Gomez Inspire Show. This is Daniel Gomez, and thank you so much for tuning into our show today. We'd love your feedback. Please drop us a comment, and thank you for leaving us a review. Don't forget to subscribe to our show and share this episode with a friend. And my free gift for listening to our show today is a copy of my best-selling book, You Were Born to Fly. To get your free copy, go to danielgomezinspires.com and get your copy today. That's danielgomezinspires.com. And to elevate your life and business even more, follow me on social media at Daniel Gomez Inspires on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. Together, we will discover the key that unlocks your confidence.